This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 195, where we're talking about Daredevil, Season 3, Episode 9, Revelations. What's up, fellow Defenders? It is I, Chris, and I am back for Defenders TV Podcast, episode 195, where we're today talking about Season 3 of Daredevil, Episode 9, Revelations. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues and co-hosts.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek. Welcome back, Chris.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am John, the third and final host that is rounding out the group.
Yes, gentlemen, I was away for the last because I don't want to call it man flu, but like everyone else is calling it man flu. I'm like, no, I was sick. I had no voice. I had like temperature. I was sweating. So is it just man flu because I'm a man, or anyway, that's beyond the point. I was sick and I had no voice, and I don't think even Derek's prowess as a producer could fix the squeak that was my vocal cords.
Yes, well, if there is one thing that is required to be on a podcast, it's having a voice. So yes, we did let you off for two podcasts, actually, for our Doctor Strange Strange Tales coverage, and for our last episode of Daredevil 308, and all of those wonderful battles between Fisk and Karen Page. So welcome back, Chris. Sorry you missed that one.
Thank you very much. No, it's good.
Feeling better.
So we're confirming it was just the Downton Abbey version of Daredevil. So Kingpin was kind of just like, hello, and Karen Page was the worker. Anyway, moving on. Really interesting episode. Quite happy where they went. Mm-hmm. Left everything in a bit of a cliffhanger that led us into this episode.
Yeah.
Which I was not expecting them to do so early. I thought it was going to be a later reveal.
I'm so glad they have revealed what they did reveal in that episode. We're going to talk about it, obviously, as we get into our spoiler-filled discussion of this episode. But I'm so glad they revealed that moment very early on, or at this point in the season, because we've known it since Defenders. So really glad that happened. The sad news about the passing of Stan Lee came in while I was editing the podcast. Just wanted to play a little piece about his thoughts about Daredevil, the character. There was an interview that he was doing with Seagate a couple of years ago, where he was asked what the most surprising character he'd ever created was. Here's his response.
Maybe the most surprising was one day I said, gee, I'll bet I could make a hero out of a guy who is blind. Because if you're blind, all your other senses become magnified to a degree. If I just exaggerate that. And then I came up with Daredevil. So maybe that was the most surprising one, because you wouldn't think of a blind superhero right off the bat.
All of us here as comic book readers are obviously very saddened by the loss of Stan Lee. Even if you didn't ever read a Marvel comic, I think you probably recognize who he was. One of the greatest storytellers ever around. So from me, thanks to Stan Lee for creating Nick Fury, the Howling Commandos, S.H.I.E.L.D., all along with Jack King Kirby.
Thank you, Stan Lee, for creating Doctor Strange with Steve Ditko. You were psychedelically awesome.
Condolences to all of us who are feeling the loss of Stan Lee. I want to thank him, along obviously with Steve Ditko, in creating Spider-Man, my childhood, my character, my today. So, rest in peace, Stan, and I'm hoping you're up there creating even better universe of superheroes for everyone else. Thank you, and Excelsior.
Rest in peace, Stan Lee. Let's get into our discussion about this episode of Daredevil.
Yes, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. Just make sure you head on over to DefendersTVPodcast.com, where you can find out everything about us, our previous back issues, and everything we do so far. And you can follow us there on all good or evil podcast catchers around the world. Before you join us for this one, make sure you just drop over to our last episode, where John and Derek were talking about Strange Tales with Doctor Strange issue 7 by Mark Waid. And of course, then the Infinity Warp's Soldier Supreme, which is just basically you guys melded together, Doctor Strange and Captain America / Nick Fury. It's big part 2 of that by Jerry Duggan, which came out this weekend. So make sure you jump over and tell us if you're really enjoying our comic Strange Tales. We want to know what you think about our comic reviews. And we want to know what you all think of everything we do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But Chris, we need to get you on board to Strange Tales.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You need to provide us with your list.
Yes, my list is secret at the moment and it's been shared, but we're trying to figure out what will be the best ones to focus on.
It's been so long since Chris has been involved in Strange Tales that John actually forgot who his favourite comic book character was last time. So
that's true.
You need to get on and talk some Spider-Man. There's Spider-Geddon going on at the moment, Chris. You need to start picking that out, you know?
Okay, just really one quick thing. They actually launched in this Spider-Geddon 2. Mm-hmm. They launched Spiders-Man, which is a Spider-Man's from a different, basically their version of Elseworlds, Multiple Versus, but which is a collection of hundreds of thousands of spiders who collectively think that they are Peter Parker.
Nice.
It's a hive mind kind
It's
of
a hive mind that thinks it's Peter Parker, but
Interesting.
made up of hundreds of thousands of spiders. So it's just like they eat bad guys.
Why aren't we reading this at the moment, Chris? This is definitely one for Strange
Because I
Tales.
think that this is definitely one, but I want to get the collected edition on this one. It's going to just kind of get it all in one big healthy dose, like a binge watching on Netflix.
Nope, that's not how we do our Strange Tales, Chris. We got to go for issue by issue, so you got to choose out an arc. But that is something that we will save for Strange Tales. We'll let Chris go away and think about it. Think about what he's done.
Yes, you think about it, Chris.
Let's get into this episode of our Daredevil coverage. Episode 309, Revelations. This episode was directed by Jennifer Lynch, daughter of David Lynch. She has directed another episode of Marvel Netflix. We've spoken about it before, back when she directed an episode of Jessica Jones in season 2. Really good director. I'm really enjoying the work that she's bringing to the TV. And obviously I love David Lynch. I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan, so always cool to have her involved in these shows. She also is directing an episode of season 6 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., reportedly the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which would make me cry. But we do know they have at least got 13 episodes, which will be coming out after Avengers 4 next year. So at least we get another 13 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. next year, which is cool. The episode was written by Eric Olson and by Sam Ernst, who's written 2 episodes of Daredevil this season. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. Matt Murdock's already shaky world tilts further when he learns the truth about his parenthood. Struggling, knowing that both Sister Maggie and Father Lantom had been hiding the truth from him, Matt goes to an abandoned boxing club to reconnect with his past. Meanwhile, Ray Nadeem tells his superiors Tammy Hatley and Agent Wynn about Wilson Fisk and Special Agent Poindexter, but soon discovers how deep Fisk's influence runs. With a bullet to the throat and head of Agent Wynn, Hatley proves her loyalty. As Felix Manning comes to clean up, he leaves Nadeem no choice but to work for Fisk. Elsewhere, Karen Page runs for her life after provoking Fisk, and Foggy Nelson and his family are threatened with prison by Felix unless he publicly apologizes for speaking out against Fisk. As a bright new day dawns at the FBI, Nadeem and his new partner Dex put into play Kingpin's new plan to draw out Daredevil. After quietly arresting several gang leaders, they are brought to Fisk, who offers to protect them from FBI charges in exchange for payment. But as they wait for the devil of Hell's Kitchen, they wait and wait and wait. As following an epiphany at Fogwell's gym, Matt Murdock doesn't show and refuses to rise to Fisk's bait. Instead, Matt Murdock follows a different path that Fisk does not expect, as Matt goes to the hotel to discover his dirty little secrets. While there, he overhears FBI agents loyal to Fisk that they now know exactly where Karen Page is hiding and who is helping her.
And as we mentioned, this is an episode called Revelations. Let's begin where last episode left off. Chris, we have the revelation of Mother Maggie, not Sister Maggie. So our case note number 1, Matt confronts Lantham about this.
Yeah, so I'm with Lantham here. So this is a bit of a weird one. I feel for Matt. Matt has been lied to. Okay. But we get Matt goes to the bar. We see Lantham with his collar off, hustling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cool.
that was really cool.
Pretty sure that's a sin, but anyway, let's just jump over this one for a second. He's downing the whiskey.
He doesn't take the money, remember? He lets the guy go.
That's just
he
when
realizes he's a priest.
just when he realizes he's a priest. What happened to all the other guys? The queue of men going, "Oh, we've just been beaten." Anyway, Lantham recounts how Maggie met Jack Murdoch. We get the backstory of what happened with Maggie and how everything came to pass. It's a really well done view on postpartum depression, and their take, if you will. I was happy to see this take on it, and how they handled it very well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What I wasn't happy with this scene was Matt's overinflated self-opinion. Like, he's so annoyed at Lantham for not telling him, but Lantham explains, and then he has that kind of sarky, I would have slapped him, kind of pat on the shoulder about being a lying, sinful man. And I'm like, no, he just told you why, and I know you're hurt, but there's obviously reasons. I don't like where Matt is going and what he is becoming in this. And they're going out of their way to very much show you this darker side of Matt, this unfriendly, not the Matt we were introduced to in season 1.
Yeah, and unsurprisingly, I'm probably going to take the other side of this discussion here. Matt Murdock, for me, what he's gone through is pretty tough. This moment of realization that where he finds out that Maggie is his mother it's absolutely destroyed him. But what I love what they've done here is have him confront Lantham, not Maggie. It's not Maggie that he goes after. It's not her for not telling him. It's the fact that he has been left on his own for years in an orphanage with his mother just around the block, basically. And Father Lantham is the closest family that he's had. And over the years, even though Lantham knew all about his mother's life, over the years, Matt has confided in him all of everything. And all Lantham had to say was, actually, your mother is still alive, but she left you. Now you two sit in a room and sort it out. And he never did it over the course of his entire life. I totally understand why Matt feels betrayed by him. And all of the lessons that Lantham has taught him over the years do feel like they're not real to Matt now. So all of the solace that he took from the church and from Father Lantham feels to Matt like it has all been a lie. So I can kind of understand why this is another one of the steps in the ladder that Matt has taken to get out of the depression that he's had for years. It's another one of those steps being pulled away from him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a bit column A, column B here. I think you definitely understand why Matt Murdock is raw, and why he's angry at Father Lantham, who has, been his family and knew everything but didn't say anything. But I do think that's projection for his anger at his mum and his father, who, he can't approach. He can't confront his dad about this because his dad is dead. And I think that's what makes the whole Fogwell's gym element so good, because that is that conversation in his head with his dead father. But unfortunately, I agree with Chris that Lantham gets the full force of Matt's sort of anger and upset at this moment, let alone the fact that he is going down a dark path here as well. And I think the fact that Lantham explains why, it's not his place as such to have said this. And maybe he was asked not to.
He was. He was definitely asked not to. I get that. I think the point is that Matt feels that he can't approach Maggie because Maggie's not even a part of his family. Maggie's someone that took care of him when he was in an orphanage and is now taking care of his wounds now that he's Daredevil. Lantham is the one that has taken the place of his family, even though his mother could have done that for years. So he feels like he's the one to take out this on because Lantham stepped in when he actually didn't need to. He should never have stepped into the place of his mother because his mother was there.
But I still think that, Matt is massively going after Lantham, and Lantham ultimately doesn't deserve this in full. And he needs time. Absolutely. I'm sure it will all become rosy again. But I do think that, Matt's issue is with his dad and with his mum for doing that, not the person who looked after him on the back of their abandonment of him for various different reasons. But I understand why Matt is like that. Absolutely. That's why I said column A, column B.
Yep.
It is good because it has that messiness about it, which ultimately is revealed in this confrontation with Lantham.
And what I love about it as well is that he's the one that reveals it to Maggie. It's not Matt. And he reveals it in just 2 words. Matt knows.
Yeah.
and we just see Maggie completely breaking down. We'll talk a little bit more about Maggie later on and her reaction to it in one of our later points, but that's something that I like about how they've taken this approach to it with Matt confronting Latham, who's been the one that's been giving him guidance for so many years, and then he's the one that tells Maggie that Matt knows. I kind of like the distance that Matt puts between himself and that situation. I think it's just a really good moment for the show.
I'm in agreement with you. I want to ask a question for viewers or fellow defenders who have not read Born Again, who do not understand the backstory. This would have come as a surprise, as shock to them. For those of us who have, we knew this was coming at some point, or well, we assumed because of we knew who the character was, etc. I knew this was coming. I was well aware that they were going to pull this at the reveal at some point. I'm still happy of how they did it. It feels well constructed, well written in terms of the actual style of the reveal, the way that they're choosing it to go. They could have gone down the route of exactly what happened in the comic books and things like that, but I think this is a better, more organic reveal for the way the show is heading.
Yeah, I'm really glad they used the comic book origin from Original Sin, not from Born Again, because the Born Again one, as we spoke about last week, John, the Born Again reveal is Matt says, "Are you my mother?" And she says no. And then there's a panel that says that Matt knows from her heartbeat that she's lying. And that's it. That's the only thing that we get in Born Again, that Matt finds out that that's his mother from a heartbeat. Whereas Original Sin is the concept of why she left, which is what is the more important story to talk about. It's not that she is his mother, it's that she's his mother and why has she left. And I think that's a much more interesting story, the exploration that we got in here. And just that flashback really to Matt's father and mother being really happy, having a child, and then her going through postnatal depression and not understanding it at all is a much more interesting story than was originally written by Frank Miller, because the Frank Miller story was almost the 80s. Oh my God, his mother, the nun, got knocked up when she was a nun and had a child. It's too 80s shocking to be a good story for a TV show.
No, that's it.
So I think the exploration of postpartum depression is quite interesting in the show.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's really good. I like how just that image of Jack coming in and the baby is left on its own on the table with Maggie, not really knowing what to do, having that kind of distance, that alienation. And from the baby, generally, I think probably childbirth is far from perfect. And I like how they capture it here in that time, maybe where it wasn't talked about as much. And maybe the role of husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, certainly with the context of Maggie being a nun, is very socially rigid at that time compared to today. So I really like that, how it was drawn out. But speaking of structure and rigidity, case note 2, as it all falls apart for Ray, that FBI structure. We get a lot of reveals here, which is good for an episode called Revelations. And I love this aspect of this episode, to be honest, because I thought it played with the fact that Wilson Fisk has got all these tentacles throughout the FBI in a really, really nice way. And I think in particular for Tammy Hatley, Nadim's boss, I just thought it was really nicely done, because you do feel a lot of sympathy for her.
Oh, yeah.
In this moment, even though she's just redecorated her house in a lovely shade of red. There is significant amounts of plastic sheeting being put in. And I mean, the great thing about that scene was, they walk into her house with all this plastic sheeting up for a kill. And you are thinking, oh, she's redecorating the house. She talks about the contractors. And then it happens and you go, yes, it is obvious. And I think that reveal is obvious given they've just walked into a forensically clean room in order for a murder to take place, whether it was Nadim or, as it turns out, Agent Wynn. But you weren't thinking that. You were thinking that she actually did have the decorators in for her house. And to me, it's kind of like, she's been hiding in plain sight there in the same way that this whole setup right at the start was. But I really, I enjoyed how that played out. And there are a lot of moments, I think in particular in the lift as they go to get Wilson Fisk, which is really, really nice.
Yeah. One thing that did completely throw me off, though, was that Tammy's daughter says hello to her. In the house as Ray comes in. So I was not expecting a kill to happen when you hear the child's voice in the house.
That is true. That is true.
And I do think it was a shocking kill. As Ray has just revealed everything that's going on, everything he knows, what he knows about Dex, what he knows about Kingpin to Agent Wynn, then hands over his gun because he's being told he's going on suspension and happily goes, if that's all I get out of this, that's fine, and then his gun is lifted and shot through the throat, shot through the head. Agent Wynn is no longer there. I think that's a shocking moment in the episode. We have thrown out since episode 1 that someone in the FBI must be in Kingpin's pocket. I think, John, you even threw it out last episode that Tammy might be the one that's giving him all the information. The way this is handled in this episode is so different than what I thought. I thought there was just somebody that's, in the pocket of Fisk getting £1 million to do whatever, to provide whatever information he wants. It's not that. He's got information on many, many people in the FBI in various positions. We get the reveal as Ray is pulled into this group as he walks into the room of how many people in the FBI are in Fisk's pocket, and it's quite shocking.
Two things. The first thing I want to bring up to account is on the gun, right? When Hartley shoots the internal affairs guy, she's wearing gloves. So I'm a bit on Ray to kind of go, you should have noticed that your boss was putting on plastic gloves at one point. Like that was that for me, that's like she wasn't wearing them earlier.
She wasn't. That was something I spotted the second time round.
Yeah.
Where the continuity at some point she puts on gloves. And you're right. Then the question both from Nadeem and Agent Wynn is like, what are you doing? Unless she was doing it under the table or something,
I feel like his attention is pretty distracted by the fact that he's revealing about his partner or his, one of his best friends in the FBI is working for Fisk. He's the one that is Daredevil. I think he's revealing all of this to the internal affairs guy. Possibly he was just distracted and missed it while he was focusing on Wynn and telling him the story, I suppose. But,
Yeah, and I the other thing is, as you said, we see the infiltration of the FBI is a lot bigger than we're ever led to believe, or we even think up to this point. Mm-hmm. It's good to remember it's not just that team, it's potentially the infiltration has gone beyond outside, so it could be all the way up to Dex's old team, the SWAT team, all the way up to some of the highest members. He really is becoming the codename Kingpin.
Yeah, that reveal was really nicely done there, for sure. And I think it's not just the FBI, because you have that moment in the lift where Nadeem says, why didn't you try and get out and run? Go to Homeland Security, go to any other government agency. And she's like, no, we're out of our league. She makes this point that we're out of our league. He knows everything. He's got influence everywhere, including Homeland Security. So there is a suggestion as well. It's not just within the FBI, which would make sense as well.
Yeah, because Tammy's story itself is quite heartbreaking. When we hear why she's working for Fisk, that whole thing of Ray going, was it money? Was it influence? Is it power? Is that how you got into your position? And Tammy's kind of going, no, you don't understand. I used to have 2 children. I used to be married. I only have 1 child now. He arranged what looked like a hit and run on 1 child, and I had to divorce my husband to keep him even moderately safe. But I still have another child, he will get to your children. She calls out the fact that Ray also has a child, so he needs to be really careful here and needs to tread very carefully. She calls out the influence of Fisk as well in Ray's life. That whole story from episode 1 that we all thought was just revealing how nice a guy Ray was. Actually, that was all caused by Fisk. He pulled the medical insurance on his sister-in-law who got cancer. And that's how Ray got involved and got into the pocket of Fisk, because he was putting pressure on Ray from a monetary perspective. And now, a year later, when he's the one that Fisk comes to and says, I want to start a deal, that's been in the planning by Fisk for a year. It's fantastic. I love how deep and how elaborate this scheme is. We may have been calling it out for 8 episodes that Fisk has someone in his pocket, but I didn't expect how elaborate his scheme was going to be.
I really like Tammy Hatley's response here immediately after she's killed Wynn of, look what you've made me do. You've brought this into my house. And she kind of throws it back on him, and you kind of do just for a moment go, hang on, you're the one who's in cahoots with Fisk. And then you have that moment in the lift where that kind of makes a bit more sense, where she talks about the fact that she's, as you say, she's divorced her husband. One of the kids has presumably been hit by a Fisk ordered hit and run, and you just kind of, in that moment, kind of feel sorry for her. And you realize that actually, in some ways, she may have been protecting Nadeem by saying, you're not getting this promotion, that you're not going to do all of this. She gives out to him for going to Poindexter's apartment. Why did you do that? You should have come to me then, and I would have told you not to bother. There is a protective element. She's not totally faultless, absolutely, but it's a really interesting take on her character and makes it way more complex than simply this person planted in the FBI. And I think that is really excellent writing here. Yeah. I love the fact as well that Wilson Fisk makes Nadeem take off the ankle bracelet, the tracker. That is just proper degrading Nadeem here in that moment.
Yeah.
I am the Kingpin. Yeah. Codename Kingpin. It's just really, really cool. I absolutely loved all of this. Although, just quickly going back to the kid in the house, I kind of agree. That's kind of slightly annoyed me on it now, because unless the kid had her music player up to max with her beats on, that she couldn't hear the gunshot.
She leaves.
Does she? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that now.
I think she's saying goodbye to her mother as they come in, but I think that's
perfect.
What kind of puts you off, I think, is
yes,
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You hear the child in the house saying, I think she's just saying goodbye to her mom, but you hear her in the house and you're going, okay, that nothing can happen here, but that's just great writing then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also,
perfect.
just to layer into it as well, Nadeem calls out that he's known Tammy for 10 years. How can she have turned? I love that they layered in earlier on in the season that, yes, he may know her for 10 years, but she doesn't talk about her personal life very often with Ray, because he asks her for one piece of advice about his family and feels like that's pushing too far in their friendship just to ask for one piece of advice. It's a nice little layering that she wouldn't have talked to him about what happened in their relationship and what happened with their kids, and that he may not know that she had 2 kids until this point of reveal. Nice little touch there. One final thing about this point, Dex is returned to his position in the FBI by Tammy as well, now that Ray's on board. Dex is now back in his position in the FBI, and that cover story about the lawyer, that story's confirmed by Tammy. She says to the department, thanks for paying for the lawyer and getting him his job back. Interestingly, because we thought this might have been just Ray's cover story to get into Dex's apartment when we talked about the last episode, but it seems like either Tammy's going with that cover story that Ray arranged, or it actually was a true story and Ray was just using that opportunity to get into Dex's apartment. But just an interesting...
I love where Poindexter kind of thanks everyone, and he turns to Nadeem and just says, I've got a lot to thank Nadeem for and to pay him back for everything he's done to me. Just so nice. I love the play on words, the threat behind it, and certainly, the threat of Poindexter at Nadeem's house. At each point, making Nadeem feel absolutely uncomfortable and on edge. So that was just a really nice interaction between these 2 agents, for sure.
And it is really interesting, isn't it? Dex does seem to be much more in the pocket of Fisk in this episode. It feels like he has now really accepted his position as kind of third in command in the Kingpin army in this episode. We see a bit more of him later on in the episode. But I think it's time to get on to case note number 3, which is kind of a combined case note because we do need to talk about what else is going on and where else Fisk's fingers are running in this episode. Case note number 3, Karen's going on the run and Foggy gets the Frighteners.
Yeah, as I say, I think this is really interesting in that everyone is performing to the Wilson Fisk script, to, the production that is being generated in New York City by Wilson Fisk from his penthouse with Felix Manning, and Karen heading on the run is absolutely one of those. She realized that provocation that she took to Wilson Fisk is probably in hindsight the wrong move, even though she was doing it obviously to try and draw out that crazy violent side of Wilson Fisk. Mm-hmm. And then we have Foggy and his family, where in the tradition of Wilson Fisk, he's gone after his family. He doesn't need to touch publicly Foggy Nelson, even though he's hiding in plain sight. He will just simply go after his family and his family's business. So I really like how they're all sort of playing to Wilson Fisk's tune, and I think it's interesting. So is Dex, so is Nadim in here, and I think one of the great things about this episode is that they all fall into line a bit, but with the exception of Matt Murdock. Mm-hmm. But I suppose we'll come to that later.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed about this, also with Foggy's piece and his family, what I really enjoy about it is that this was something else that Fisk was working on a year ago, and completely orchestrated by Fisk in this case, where we had the story about Ray and his sister's insurance falling through when she fell ill. This was all orchestrated by Fisk. What we believe from the story from his brother is that Fisk made sure that the suppliers that were supplying the business of Foggy's family, that they pulled out and stopped giving them anything until his family took a loan from Red Line, who are Fisk's company. So all the time since Fisk has been sent to prison by Nelson and Murdoch, basically back in season 1, he's been working on ways to get back at them. He's had this plan in his pocket just in case anything was done by Foggy. Like, that's really, really elaborate and really, really interesting.
When this slowly came out, I was like, oh, wow. You're really starting to see in this episode, in Revelations, aside from the biblical context, there's very much the revelation that Fisk has been planning this.
Yeah. In
some form or the other. He's been moving things around, moving his chess pieces, his pawns, for well over a year and a half nearly. Like, to get the plan in place for in order to set up Red Lion, in order then to stop the suppliers, to threaten the suppliers, so that it gets so bad, you've still got to do a year to 6 months of work, and then that's when Red Lion can step in.
Yeah.
So it's incredible, and but we still get one of the best lines of this episode in here, where Mother Nelson turns around to Marcy and goes, "Have you thought about freezing your eggs? You know, and it's never too late."
Oh, God.
That is such an Irish mammy thing to do. You're not looking after yourself. We're going to have these grandkids. Come on, like, we're an Irish family. Freeze these eggs so they're ready.
I don't know whether the actual phrase itself is an Irish mammy thing, but definitely stepping over the boundaries in the relationship of your son is absolutely an Irish mammy thing to do,
Yes. Irish mammy for the 21st century.
Yeah, just one other thing about the Karen piece. She does go to warn Matt that Wilson Fisk knows exactly who he is, which is the information that she found out when she confronted Fisk last episode. Maggie explains to Karen the reason why Matt is gone, and also actually shares with her that she is his mother. Quite interesting that she trusts Karen that quickly and that instantly, after only meeting her once in the past and never having told Matt about this. But I like the fact that she confides in her that the real reason behind it isn't just because of the postnatal depression, it's because at the time, she had no idea what it was, and nobody else knew how to explain to her that these feelings are normal and that she can get some help because it wasn't talked about. I like that she's going through that discussion with Karen because it's a tough thing. You know, she did have a way out, and the way out was to kind of hide herself away in the church, and that's the path she took. Whereas hopefully, if this had happened to her in present day, there would have been a support system around her that could have actually helped her. It's just an interesting discussion to have.
Oh, definitely. I think that's what we're alluding to in case note 1, and I think it gets drawn out here by Sister Maggie as well. So I think this conversation between Maggie and Karen is just really well written, and it's approached in just a different way than what you would expect, you know. And I think that link to Sister Maggie then taking that life of nunnery is one of those things that would have happened, and I think it's really kind of a realistic way as how this would have gone down, actually. And so I liked it a lot, this scene, and how the writers have approached this theme.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And 2 questions I'm left with at the end of case note number 3. One is, does this make Karen stay with Sister Maggie instead of running away and going back to her family, even though she's been told not to go back to her family? Does this make her stay with Maggie and kind of take care of her? And for Foggy, we're left with this concept of he's being pushed by Marcy to now take the next step and actually run for DA. But does this make him roll back? Does this make him actually go, hang on a second, my family are more important than actually taking the role of DA? That does feel like more of a Foggy thing to do. But maybe Fisk might want the new DA in his pocket for real.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen with those two? It's an interesting thing coming out at this point.
Yeah. And just for my final note on this, I feel really bad for Deborah Ann Woll, especially in this episode, because they just, for a lot of the last episodes, they've just put so much kind of red-eyed makeup to make her look like that she's stressed and crying, and she never just, like, I think she gets like 2 episodes where she looks normal, and she's not, hasn't looked like she's been crying or anything. I'm like, oh, poor Karen, poor Deborah.
I think I'm so happy for what they've done with her this season as well, though. As we mentioned before, this season has really given Deborah Ann Woll some really, really great scenes. That moment with Fisk last episode. This episode here, having this moment with Maggie, I think is really good as well for her to actually show that she has so much range and so much ability as an actress that just hasn't been used properly in some of the previous episodes. And I know you guys had your problems with Karen in season 2 and in season 1. I think this season that the character of Karen has really been allowed to grow and allowed to have some great moments this season.
From my perspective, I never had a problem with Karen. I just knew how juicy the storyline could be with her, and I wanted to see that. It felt weird that you had this fictional potential from this character, from the source material, and it wasn't being explored and being interwoven into the larger Daredevil picture. And I think here we really get a sense of who Karen is. I think we really get a sense of who Foggy is. We've really got a sense of who Ray Nadeem is in this episode, and even Tammy Hatley. And I think this is one of the strengths of the writing from this series, is that it pulls meaning from all the characters here, and really deepens everything around the central character of Matt Murdock and Daredevil. So, yeah, it's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to reserve judgment until the end of the season, though. And that'll be my final, whether I'm happy with what they've done to the character of Karen. Speaking of, from one thing that we saw in season 1, moving it all the way back and returning there, case note number 4, Fogwell's gym.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Matt returns to his one true home, Fogwell's gym, and his ability to punch away his anger. We've seen this quite a bit during the season. Matt just punching and punching as he's trying to deal with his issues. But this time he's accompanied by another spectral spirit, the return of Jack Murdock from season 1. Great to see Jack back, and this idea that we had all through the season of Fisk being in Matt's mind and pushing him along. Now we have his father actually speaking to him about the situation with his mother. Really interesting having this dialogue between the two of them. And I like how it's played as well, that we don't actually hear what Jack was saying. This isn't an actual flashback to Matt talking to him or anything like that when he was actually alive. We hear Jack going things like, well, maybe I did it because of this, and maybe I did it because of that, because these are all the thoughts in Matt's head. It's a nice way to have a dialogue about this.
Yeah, I think this is really a nice throwback. I like also the fact that in his conversations with his dad in spectral form, there's an epiphany here for Matt Murdock that he is and has been the lamb to the slaughter in Wilson Fisk's plans, that ultimately there is this moment that he questions whether he should take this bait that he knows is being laid for him here by Wilson Fisk through Ray Nadeem. And I really like that because it kind of has come from a place where he's exploring who he is, why he's there, and all of a sudden he takes a different path from both that spectral form of his dad, but we also then get Wilson Fisk as well returning. And I just thought it was really nicely played. There's two things here that I really enjoyed as well. I loved him wrapping his hands up in the rope to hit the punch bag with in the gym. I thought that was really cool. The rope boxing gloves.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, no, I believe that Jack actually mentioned to him, I haven't seen you using the Muay Thai ropes in it because it's basically more violent than it was like adding when people used to wrap their gloves with barbed wire and things like that. It's that type of... It's
thankfully
kind of,
not.
Okay, yes, true. Good thing you don't. as you punch, it kind of tears skin and things like that.
Right.
So this is showing this, which they don't really call it out, which is quite strange, but you see the damage he does when he kind of starts punching the imaginary Fisk. But it's this just one thing of wrapping his fist actually means he's willing to become more violent. He's descending into that violence.
Yeah, and he specifically says that the reason he's doing it is because he can't beat Devil. He can't beat Dex in the Daredevil suit because he's stronger than him.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other point that I really, really enjoyed in these scenes at Fogwell's was him beating Fisk up and breaking his neck. But then it just goes to this calm image of Matt sat down, having thought about doing this. And it leans into your point of him becoming darker and more violent. And it's even with Mrs. Shelby, where when she says, "Are you going to kill me?" he goes, "No, not yet." And that's not something you necessarily expect from Daredevil. So,
I did not notice that. That's really interesting.
yeah. So this darker place is excellent. And I think just the way it's captured in that scene where he is thrashing at Wilson Fisk, he breaks his leg, brings him to the floor, and then snaps his neck. And then it just, as the snap occurs, it just pans back to Matt sat on the gym bench, thinking about it. And that's awesome. It was really nice. It reminded me slightly of some of the scenes in Harry Potter, weirdly, where you have Harry and Voldemort kind of merging together, and then it sort of snaps back to just one of them being on their own, having this going through their head. So I thought it was really nicely done, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like this overall, Matt's coping mechanism. The visual treatment of it is very nice.
Yeah. And I have to say, it's a great way to keep these two characters connected. Remember, actually, I only realized it directly after watching this episode. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio have not had any screen time together in this entire season. They've not been in the same room as their real characters. It's only through this Fisk on Matt's shoulder, this devil on the devil's shoulder. That's the only time they've actually had scenes together. So we're 9 episodes into the season now, and our two main stars haven't actually been in the same room in the real world, I suppose. So what a great way to have the two of them playing off each other and actually have some moments together, than to have this spectral version of Fisk. It's a really cool idea. And to have, this Matt wish fulfillment. So if you wanted to see Daredevil go full bore and kill Fisk, you've actually just seen it in this episode. Not real, but at least you get the moment of it,
That's a perfect segue over into case note number 5, which is Fisk is out to get Daredevil to kill his rivals, all of them. The overall culmination of what I thought was absolutely fantastic. Ray is brought into the fold, forced into the fold, and he's forced to call Matt, or the Man in Black as he knows him, to basically set him up. They get to the location where Fisk is transported out to, and it turns out to be a restaurant, really fancy, nice restaurant. It's one of these weird New York ones where it was a bank and now it's a restaurant, right? Because they're in the bank vault, sitting at a table.
Yeah, I do really like this. And is this supposed to be the 5 other heads of the families in Manhattan or in New York? Because some of them seem a lot younger than you would think would be a head of the family, but maybe they're just a very violent family and they don't survive very long in those groups. But they are definitely heads of some other criminal organizations within the city.
I think there's a lot of churn in the heads of crime families.
Yeah, possibly.
Just a question, is that the Italian lady? That's not the same Italian lady from Luke Cage?
I don't think so.
It doesn't look like her to me.
No, it doesn't, does it?
So I'm starting to think these are like lower level gangs maybe, because the gentleman who was running the chop shop, I've never seen him before. The older gentleman who was super rich, who was out running and they arrest him, haven't seen him. But the other ones, I'm like, no, that they don't look like the heads that we've seen previously. If you want to if you see where I'm going with this. So I'm thinking maybe these are lower level gangs, but Fisk wants 20%. So they're obviously doing stuff.
I think they're business pillars in New York who are aware of the criminal connections that Fisk has and are aware of what he can do for them as well. I do like that Star is the one that refuses it, believing that actually this is all just a setup of Wilson Fisk, who's now in the pocket of the FBI, when actually the truth is quite the opposite of that the FBI are in the pocket of Fisk. And the proof comes when we see, as has been called on the internet now, because I am actually reading some stuff on the internet finally about Daredevil, Devil. comes back. So we have Poindexter in the Daredevil suit, killing Star with the Billy Club from across the room. How cool was that? Yeah. Another unexpected moment in the episode.
That was awesome. First of all, just having Dex doing cosplay is always good. Mm-hmm. Not only the kill with the Billy Club, it's just what happens next, where he face plants on the table and Wilson Fisk continues to kind of say, well, now it's gone up to 25%. And as the blood just spreads across the white tablecloth, it's like, okay, that literally was a rabbit caught in the headlights, and unfortunately is now roadkill, is no more. I just thought it was really good how Wilson Fisk just carries on and says, now it's 25%. And it's kind of like, okay, we'll pay up.
Yeah. And one of the other members of the family at the table goes, well, the only question I have, I guess, is where do I leave the money? Because they're all in now,
Yeah.
What I was wondering is, what was the actual plan? How was this supposed to play out? We had Dex dressed up as the Daredevil. We had the idea that this was supposed to be a meeting of heads being dropped by Ray to Matt. If Matt had arrived at this location, would Fisk have killed all the other heads of the families and Matt and left him there as putting the blame on Daredevil for killing heads of the families? What was the actual plan? Because the whole story of all of the heads of the families and this type of crime meetup was given to Matt as the impetus to make him come to the restaurant rather than go to the hotel.
I think it was just more kill two birds with one stone.
Right.
Literally.
Actually have the meeting and
kill the man in black, kill Matt.
Right.
Because that's what would drive him there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I assumed. I like that Matt wasn't stupid enough to go.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it would have ended the season early to a degree.
I don't know. I think Matt's probably ready for a fight now. What I do like about it is this is the cherry on top of this episode, because what we've just found out for the other 40 minutes of this episode is that Fisk is really intelligent, has made plans that nobody else could figure out except Matt. He's on the other end of a phone and goes, actually, that's what he wants me to do. I have another thing that I should be doing. It's showing that he is the true antagonist for Matt Murdock.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen Matt Murdock come to that realization much sooner than, say, Karen or Foggy.
Yeah.
I think in particular with how it went down with Melvin Potter, that whole thing. And I think it's nice that it comes as well, not only from that, but from effectively his dad saying, you're not as stupid as that to take the bait. And I really like that connection back to Matt hurting because of what he's just found out about his mum and dad, and also how that burning of his past, in a sense, at the moment, is fueling how he's approaching Wilson Fisk again, to keep him one step ahead of Fisk, which he now knows he has to do because of what happened with Melvin Potter. So this is really cool, I think. It is. It makes them kind of equals. It makes them, as you say, the true protagonist, antagonist. So really nicely done, I think. And I do have to say, just the look on Vincent D'Onofrio's face as he realizes that Matt Murdock, the man in black, the devil of Hell's Kitchen, is not turning up for the party here. It is really nice, that frustration, that anger that he has somehow failed. And you do feel a bit for Nadeem here, and he's like, well, I said just what you wanted me to say, he's not shown, know, because you have that line from Wilson Fisk where he says, he will know it's a trap, but he will come anyway. And all of a sudden, he is no longer playing to Wilson Fisk's analysis of him. And that moment of anger and frustration, you wonder, is there a slightly deep set of worry in the eyes of Wilson Fisk that he's not playing ball? So I love that. I really, really like that.
Yeah, so Matt is no longer playing ball. He doesn't want to go to dinner, but instead he's going to church. Or at least that's what we think he's going to do, because at the end of this episode, essentially, he overhears the two FBI agents converging the cops onto the church where Karen has been spotted.
Yes, so nice cliffhanger there. So nice placement where Matt is as well to be able to find that information out. So we will have a meeting now, finally, of Matt and Karen, hopefully where Matt will save her and his mom and resolve their issues in the next episode. think that's it for our top 5 case notes. Only note I had actually kind of ties in very well with this point here with the Fisk and Matt moment. We haven't seen Matt's world on fire throughout the season. Chris, I know you mentioned earlier on in the season that they kind of had replaced that a little bit. What I kind of feel is that they've taken it out completely, and I do think that Matt's actually using a bit more superpowers than is being shown on screen. In the past, they would have relied on something like using his world on fire to show that he's reading people's minds, reading their heartbeats, that kind of stuff. I'm wondering if that conversation that he has on the phone with Dex is enough for him to hear something in Dex's voice that betrays that meeting wasn't real from Fisk, and we just didn't get it because they didn't show us the world on fire. They didn't show us that he is able to hear something in the heartbeat. Ray is very clear that he said exactly what Kingpin told him to say, but Matt didn't come. He is pointing out that, maybe there is something there that we've missed.
Yeah, or even when he feels the electric current on the floor in Fisk's dressing room. So I'm in agreement with you here. They've amped up his powers, but they haven't amped it in the way of World on Fire. They've amped it with the slight different camera usage, the slightly out of focus, and then it was a high-pitched noise. So I did enjoy that. When he felt the electric current, it focused in on his fingertips, and it did this kind of juttering shake, but the centered was in focus.
Absolutely. And I also have to give huge credit to Charlie Cox for selling it, because he's doing such a great job with just the facial expressions that he has. We talked about the moment last episode where he overheard Maggie, and the reaction from him is just fantastic, and he really does sell these moments when he's using these powers. So
he sells being blind, which I think is still the hardest thing beyond that, which is still when he was in the gym, I was like, oh wow, that one scene where he's just standing looking forward, and you're like, yeah, he's a blind man. He still walks around not looking at what he's touching, but able to pick it up in his peripheral view. Absolutely loved it. I personally want to thank Jennifer Lynch on this one, because I think you see a bit more usage of his powers through this kind of directorial lens, whatever way she's decided to kind of frame it. So I think the electric current touch, I think, was good. But I think you're right. They should have shown him. They should show him being able to hear the distinct difference in people's voices and kind of know more. I think they'll need to explore that more.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, maybe. I actually just wanted to point it out, rather than say that they should do it that way. Because it feels like they would have lent into that in season 1. They would have gone, this is a superhero show, so we've got to show him with using his superhero powers. And I'm just wondering if it's just something that we're missing, because it is all there. It's all on screen. But they're just not actually saying he's got the superpower.
Yeah, I just don't think they're visualizing it. They're not making that special effects visualization of it like they did in season 1. And I think that kind of adds to it. I think, again, a bit like in season 1, they're doing more of the soft focus. They're doing the sound effect rather than something visual to suggest that his powers are ramping up, which I think is kind of subtle and nice.
Pretty cool. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. One final one from me, just to make sure, if you do want to read the story of Mother Maggie, or Sister Maggie, the mother of Daredevil, that is in Original Sin Daredevil, back from 2014. So go and pick that up. It's a really good story. Have a check out and see what the actual storyline behind that from the comic books is. I think we need to get on to defends, guys. Chris, do you want to take us off since you haven't been with us for an episode? Do you defend season 3, episode 9, Revelations?
I do defend it. I think, Derek, you put it to me best off air, where you said that this episode was very much bang revelation, bang revelation, bang revelation, bang revelation. And I think that's probably why it didn't 100% work for me. Which is, I know, a really weird thing, because I've talked positively about the whole episode. Potentially it was just the revelation after revelation. It didn't have time to fully sink in. I didn't doubt it was just very much bang, 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 bang. And I think if we had all these revelations had been spaced over 2 episodes, then I think it potentially might be in a bit more impactful for me. That being said, I was still very happy with what we were given in this episode. It was almost like they know where they want to go for the next 4 episodes, and they hadn't yet hit these points, and they don't want them in the next episodes, or they need to get there to get to the next episode. So they're just like, all right, we're going to put everything into this 1 hour. Even if this had an extra 10, 15 minutes on this episode, that potentially could have spaced it enough.
Right.
So yes, I defend.
Are you sure?
Yes, I do. I enjoyed everything that we've talked about. I enjoyed every revelation. It was just too much, too quickly, too condensed. So if I was doing a rating score like you, it would be a 4 out of a 5, because it's all the revelations should make it a 5. Should be like, oh, this is everything we wanted to know, but it was just too much and the pacing was off, so it pulls it down. But it's not a bad episode. So yes, I do defend, but I'm just slightly off. I don't know what it is about it, but yes, I do defend. John, do you defend this episode of Daredevil Season 3, Episode 9, Revelations?
Yes, I do defend this episode of Daredevil Revelations, and I am going to probably completely disagree with everything you just said, Chris.
That's why we have this podcast.
Yes, exactly. I give this 5 shades of red out of 5.
Wow.
I do think this was a really good episode of Daredevil. I like the nuclear option for the revelations. I think we have been saying since episode 1 about the tentacles of Wilson Fisk, and I think a slow release of revelations would have lost their impact as you would have moved along. We knew it, and so they gave it us all in one big nuclear option, which I really liked. And the thing is about that nuclear option for me was that it was nuanced. It really was nuanced. You had an amazing portrayal of postnatal depression with Sister Maggie and how that affected her life as much as Matt Murdock's. You had the interesting twist that I found with Tammy Hatley's character in that, was she protecting Nadeem? It seemed like she was. It felt like, she is caught between a rock and a hard place. There was sympathy there for that character. She wasn't just simply this Wilson Fisk drone that was doing his bidding. Yes, she was, but you really got the sense of the pressure points that were being applied by Wilson Fisk, by Felix Manning, which I thought was really nice. So I thought this was a really good episode. And I liked then the overarching contrast that Matt Murdock no longer plays ball with Wilson Fisk. And you see that in the face of Wilson Fisk as he has this meeting with the crime gangs, whereas everyone else kind of looks like they're falling into line. Ray Nadeem is like absolutely blackmailed into having to work for Fisk and partner with Dex. Karen is on the run, like Wilson Fisk would expect. And so he's got his eyes watching for her. And then you have Foggy Nelson, where the groundwork has been laid for compromising Foggy Nelson through his families and the family business. So yes, I absolutely defend this episode. And the reason why I called it Shades of Red was because, we did have Agent Wynn's red color scheme to Tammy Hartley's decorating. And we also had the beautiful bloody tablecloths and faceplant from one of the gang members. I thought they were kind of really visceral, really excellent depiction of just how violent Wilson Fisk is. Yes, he keeps it calm and collected. He is that white swan of grace. But when you see the mask slip like he did with Karen, and here in terms of getting Daredevil to attack the gang leader, I thought it was excellent. Really, really nice. He is the psychopath. And as well, a shout out to the fact that we get Kingpin referenced for the first time here in this episode. And I like how it's done through the codename Kingpin used by the compromised FBI agent. So that was a really nice touch as well. So yeah, definitely defend this episode of Daredevil.
And importantly, Wilson Fisk didn't kill anybody in this episode.
It's true.
Yeah. It was Dex and Hartley who killed people. And not even on an instruction from Wilson Fisk. You could have all the monitoring in the world and not one word was uttered by Wilson Fisk to say, kill those 2 people. They just know what he wants and carry it out without even a word from him. It's fascinating. Really, really good.
Derek, on that note, do you defend this episode of Daredevil?
Well, quite clearly by my comment there, I absolutely defend this episode. I'm definitely on the side of you guys. Another great episode in the series. We do top 5 points. We do our top 5 case notes for these episodes. Really, there's only 2 notes in this episode. One is Wilson Fisk is much smarter than you think he is. And the second note is, but Matt's smarter than Wilson Fisk thinks Matt is. That's it. That's all that happens in this episode. But underneath it, the nuance, the layering, the storylines, the revelations are fantastic. Really, really well written. Really well brought to the screen by everybody involved in this episode. A really good episode. Loved it.
Excellent. I think with that positive spin on how the FBI is a totally compromised organization and Wilson Fisk is absolutely the head honcho, even though he's not, if it came down to the eyes of the law. On to our feedback. Yes. Fellow Defenders, if you want to leave any discussion points or comments about anything to do with Daredevil Season 3 or each of the individual episodes, please head on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. You can also send us an email at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or you can leave a voicemail. We've not had much voicemail so far for Daredevil Season 3, but you can leave up to 90 seconds of your own thoughts over on our website. Just head on over to defenderstvpodcast.com and click on the right-hand side tab to leave 90 seconds of your thoughts.
Yeah, we have one voicemail on the way, actually, for later on in the season, but it has already been left. And just to remind everybody, as John mentioned, we have got spoiler posts over on the Facebook group for the episodes that we've watched. As your fellow Defenders, we're not watching ahead. We're putting up our spoiler posts so that you can feed us back on the Facebook group. If you want to send any feedback in for anything for the rest of the season, any of the episodes we haven't watched from 10 to 13, pop us over an email to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. We will be putting up the spoiler posts, but they'll obviously be a lot later than potentially you've watched the episode. So just to make sure you're aware, that's why there's no spoiler posts for the later episodes, because we haven't seen them just yet. But John, do you want to kick us off with the first piece of feedback?
Yes, we have some feedback from episode 8. Anya Leah says, on my part, I loved the scene with Karen and Willie. Like 2 dueling swordmasters sparring against each other, displaying such elegance and true artistry while trying to get their combatant out of balance. Only these 2 are masters with words. Still, as everyone knows, words can be sharper than knives. At last, all cards are on the table. They both know. They both know their enemy knows. Where will they go from here? So, Karen risks her life. She's acting recklessly and close to suicidal in her ambition to take Fisk down. In this way, she is reminiscing of a very close friend of hers. Foggy puts it so well when he tells her not to go bat at me. The thing is, Fisk is not only Matt Murdock's business. Fisk is the business of the entire Hell's Kitchen and very much the business of Karen Page. Fisk personally murdered her first mentor, Ben Urich, and he tried to have her killed as well. She is well within her right to try this, I think. It's not worse than a lot of things Matt has tried, and those 2 are more alike than any of them wants to acknowledge. And I just want to add, finally, I always enjoy watching Matt making use of his abilities for other things than fighting. I mean, the investigation in Dex's apartment made me quite happy. Thank you so much, Anya, for your feedback. Yes, that use of his nose to smell the GRS and latex, it was a real nice touch there, and I liked how it contrasts with the fact that, you know, Nadeem is having to get physical evidence or wants to get the physical evidence. He can't just follow his nose in that sense. Yeah, true bloodhound here from Daredevil. And
the safe cracking as well was really cool. It was a really cool moment in it. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Anya. This is really good points here that you have about Karen and why she's going after Fisk. You know, I think we used to kind of talk about Karen as a person that ran towards danger. This here is absolutely right. It's not only that Fisk is Matt's antagonist, she's absolutely set himself up as Karen's antagonist. And why we see her so broken in this episode is because everything that she pulled together to go up against Fisk has kind of finished. She has nothing else. It's all out on the table. She's shared everything. She's told him that she's the murderer. And now she knows that she's on his hit list. So yeah, really love what she did and what happened in that episode. It makes total sense to me.
We also had feedback from Robert Phillips, who says, Mummy Maggie. Unfortunately, we did actually have to edit a previous piece of feedback from Bob, so sorry about that. He goes on to say, and Fisk smiles at the killing of Julie. What a brutal shorthand just to show how evil he is. Place that alongside the primal man hug of Dex, and you know the untrustable whole. Yes, that one scene of just Julie kind of getting the and then just wrapping her up, I was like, oh, okay. That's how that happens.
That was a very brutal killing of Julie, wasn't
It
it?
really was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just like, walk this way, did it, bang.
Yeah, I'm going to get a serious phobia about decorators. I mean, I tell you what, I'm not getting anyone in to paint my house. I'm doing it myself, I think, because, as they lay down the plastic sheeting, you're just going to be like looking around real nervous, like going, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of which, Bob Phillips also sent in some feedback on this episode 9. He says, cold open, shock upon shock, poor Ray, poor internal investigator, but yay for the plastic sheeting manufacturing industry of Hell's Kitchen, which is really booming this season.
It really is. Yeah, no. Hey, guys, we should just buy stocks in plastic sheeting. Yeah. Because if Marvel TV teaches us anything, it's that gangs and thugs and everyone are very conscious about carpets and blood, so they're going to put some down, and we might as well just get in on that, yeah.
It's really important, really important. Also on episode 9, Jamie Alexander says, love the Maggie flashback, now it all makes sense. Poor Ray, Fisk has gotten to everybody. Doesn't he need medical attention though? I'm a little worried about him. I love how Fisk's reach and influence just goes deeper and deeper. Yeah, that's a really interesting point that Jamie makes when Ray actually shares the information with the investigator from the FBI. He pulls up his shirt and shows that he's been shot. And he goes, right, we're going to get you medical attention. We're going to call the ambulance in to help you out. And then he gets killed and off goes Ray on his day. And Ray basically just uses a shower to clean up the wound. And that's kind of it, isn't it? Is that the medical attention he's going to get? It's just a shower?
And he continues to bleed. As Dex says, go change your shirt.
Yeah. So is this going to be the slowest killing of an FBI agent that we've seen on screen? Is it just like he's going to die of blood loss in episode 13 because he hasn't gotten medical attention?
No, it's going to be season 5 where he dies of gangrene.
Yeah. He's just going to get a really awful scab.
Yeah.
And then pick at it slowly.
Yeah.
We also have feedback from Tina Brown. Kingpin's gonna kingpin. I'm inserting myself here. All I could hear when she said this was Haters Gonna Hate by Taylor Swift. So it's just Kingpin's gonna kingpin, pin. Anyway, moving on. Tina had to say, but Sister Maggie steals this episode. So good. I think these Marvel shows tend to overdose on the parent issues. Fisk, Kilgrave, Mariah, Bushmaster, Jessica, Trish, Danny, Davos, just to name a few. But this time it felt earned, authentic, grounded, and heartbreaking. Because this happens in the real world to real people, amazing storytelling that did not overplay its hand. It was just beautiful. Thank you for that feedback, Tina. And I agree with you. Actually, when you wrote about it there, I was like, Fisk, Kilgrave, Mariah, Bushmaster, Jessica, Trish, Danny, Davos. It's like, oh god, they all have parent issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had not made that connection, but thank you. They do not overplay, maybe. Overuse, not overdose, maybe.
Something.
Over something.
Well, now, in fairness, if we take the entire history of comic books going back 70, 80 years, I think you'll probably find that every single character has some form of parent issue. Right back to those days, you can lay everybody out side by side and everybody has some form of parent issue. I think it's kind of shorthand for saying that history informs your future or informs how you are now. It's some kind of shorthand that's used, but particularly in comic books, nobody comes from a well-adjusted family. Even Superman's entire planet blew up and he's got step-parents,
So. Interestingly, except Stephen Strange, you don't really get to hear about his family. It's his experience.
That's true,
I'm pretty sure there probably is an episode. There's an issue where they were zombies.
That is true. We don't ever hear about his parents, but we do know that he's an a-hole.
Yeah, exactly.
So he comes from possibly a well-adjusted family who sent him off to medical school, and he's still an a-hole.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's what Marvel Comics is actually telling you. If you come from a well-adjusted family, look what could happen to you.
So basically, just remember, kill your parents or have some kind of massive parental issues, and you too could be a superhero.
Yay.
Forget about the radioactive spider bites or the magic usage or going under experiments in prison. That's how you do it. You kill your parents, you go into prison, you get experimented on by a crazy doctor in prison, and you become Luke Cage.
Or you become a supervillain. So, kind of toss up there.
That's a tough one.
Mike Brown also talks about this episode. He said, "This is the episode where I started to agree with the criticism out there that Fisk is too omnipotent and omniscient. It's one thing to make it seem like our heroes have an impossible task ahead of them, but this just makes it feel unrealistic." Interesting perspective there, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose one of the things that we're not being told in these episodes so far, but you kind of can read into it, is that this is what Fisk has been doing in prison for all of the time since Matt put him away. He has been orchestrating his revenge, and all of this is about getting himself back to where he wanted to be in season 1. As we mentioned, he's now going by the code name of Kingpin with all of the FBI agents. Remember back in season 1 when he was climbing the ladder in New York, where he was telling everybody, don't use my name in communications. As we said, people are now killing for him without him having to say a word because they know what he wants. I don't know about the criticism of being too omnipotent and omniscient. I just think he's a very smart guy who's planned all of this, and we're seeing the fruits of it now.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Mike. I think this is a really interesting perspective because there is part of me whereas, how far do you take this idea that someone is just totally in control? The great thing about this is that where that seems to happen with everyone else, this is the moment where the hiccup, for Wilson Fisk occurs where Daredevil doesn't take that bait. And so I think that shows the chink here of his omnipotence or his Machiavellian type of planning and detail. I definitely get where you're coming from here, and I think it's a really interesting angle on Wilson Fisk for sure. And I think it's good then that you have this slight chink appear in that by Daredevil not showing up to the gig.
Mm-hmm.
We also have feedback from Alyssa Lynn Moskwa, who went on to say, "This episode hurt so much. I'm glad they merged both of Maggie's backstories, religious guilt and postpartum depression. It worked really well. Poor Matt keeps having existential crises, and his psychosis appears to have gotten worse since that revelation as he hallucinates his dad. I didn't expect Maggie to tell the truth to Karen, and she blames herself for Matt being messed up. Guilt appears to run in the family. I really felt for Ray in this episode and how uncomfortable he felt as Dex wormed his way into his family. Did not expect his boss to be in Fisk's pocket. That was a huge surprise." Thank you so much, Alyssa, for your feedback. Guilt, it's a Catholic thing, I think is the only way to put it. We're like, if you're Catholic, you've got guilt.
You got guilt. It's it's the new ad instead of you've got milk.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing. Join the Catholic Church. You got guilt.
As you've got some kind of moustache of guilt. Or something.
The moustache of guilt.
Anyway, thank you so much for that feedback, Alyssa.
Alyssa, thanks so much for that piece of feedback. There's really, really good stuff going on in this episode. I think, as everybody has mentioned, Maggie's scene in this episode where Lantham tells her that Matt knows all about it, and then she falls screaming to the floor at the fact that her original sin has been exposed to Matt. It's really, really good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alyssa. We have some more feedback from Anya Leah on episode 9. My 5 points from this episode. 1, poor Karen, running for her life. 2, poor Maggie, suffering from postpartum depression, leaving her baby boy behind. 3, poor Foggy, finding out Fisk has gotten to his family. 4, poor Agent Nadeem, for obvious reasons. And 5, and poorest of them all, as it always seems to be, poor Matt, his mother being around his entire orphan life, not letting him know. From here, we can only go upwards, I hope. Well, let's hope, fingers crossed. Let's all touch wood and have our luckiest of trinkets on us, because yes, the only way surely is up. If only there isn't going to be probably Fisk, Dex, and the whole of the FBI, it would seem, in their way. And of course, let's not forget Mrs. Shelby. even though she looked petrified at her workstation. But yeah, there is certainly a lot to be feeling sorry for the gang of Karen, Maggie, Foggy, Reinadim, and Matt Murdock.
Thanks so much for all the feedback. As John mentioned earlier on, if you want to send us any feedback on the rest of the episodes, just email us to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/defenderstvpodcast. We'll be back with our next episode, episode 10, simply entitled Karen.
Whoa, we're getting our back flashback episode.
Yeah.
It's only taken 3 seasons and we're going to finally understand what drove Karen to be Karen.
I wonder if it'll be framed by her maybe talking to Maggie about her past. I'll be interested to see.
I just want to see Matt save her. I think or it should be Matt, her telling Matt. But maybe. I'm just also wondering what storyline they're going to use.
Yeah, I'm intrigued because we've been waiting a long time to see it. You never know, maybe a watcher's eye will explode in the middle of New York, revealing all of the secrets to all of the city. I've been reading Original Sins, obviously. Thanks so much for joining us, Defenders. We will talk to you again next time.
Thank you so much, fellow Defenders. See you soon.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow Defenders, for joining us. And I'm off to go and get the decorators in. Dun, dun, dun.
Derek may not be with us for this next episode. This is going to get scary.
But once they've painted everything in a nice shade of blood red, we'll be back to speak with you again soon. Bye.
Bye. Send help.